Welcome to TVBS Meeting Room. I'm your host, Wenchi Yu. Today we're so pleased to have Ambassador Curtis Chin with us. He is the former U.S. Ambassador to Asian Development Bank and now just been announced as the Asia Chair of Milken Institute. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. And we're here in Singapore. It's like Singapore's back.
Yeah.
And so how wonderful you're here, part of this grand convening.
Well, thank you for welcoming us back. Milken Institute is one of the leading think tanks in the world when it comes to free market solutions and really think about how we can solve the world's problems through the economic approach. So tell us why Asia and what do you hope to accomplish this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Milken Institute's been in Asia now. This is our ninth Asia Summit, we're calling it. But just earlier this year in Los Angeles, we celebrated our 25th global conference.
Right, I was there.
And so 9 years ago, the Milken Institute came to Asia with the same thinking almost that we're having in the US, which is that if we want to solve the world's problems, clearly private capital, the private sector needs to be engaged and involved. And so when I think about what are we trying to accomplish out here, the almost like the grand PR would be, we really want to help the impossible become possible. But what does that mean? So, it's like we have all these long-term pressing problems. Hunger, inability to give people jobs.
Right.
And even from my life as, on the board of the Asian Development Bank, I recognize that the solution can't be one more World Bank loan, one more ADB grant. That can be part of it, but it's got to be reforms in government policies, but also mobilizing really the power of economies, the power of the private sector to deliver on these solutions that we need.
I think especially now, as we look at the last 2 years, right? The world together actually went through, and still some part of the world is going through the COVID challenges. We're not really entirely over yet. In the meantime, we have the Ukraine and Russia war, which has really upended the world in a way that's, in most of our lifetime, we haven't really thought about it. And so governments, in my view, are not necessarily solving global problems together now because of all these interests and conflicts. And so I think the private sector is looking to solve the problems in collaboration with the government, in collaboration with each other. How do you think that this summit can accomplish that?
Yeah, well, first I want to go back to when we talk about the summit. There's an annual theme, and this year's Milken Institute Asia Summit theme is the world transformed. You referenced that. But in a way, when I look at that theme, I think it's also about how the world has not changed. So clearly in these last 2 years, there's a move towards use of telemedicine. We're on Zoom all the time. So indeed, the world has changed how we do business in many ways. But at the same time, and sadly, we've seen a return to really war in Europe. We've seen a return of pandemics, from like 100 years ago.
Right.
So in many ways, the world has changed, but also it's not changed. So to your question, when I think about the Milken Institute, what is it that we do? We're convening, we're bringing together people and institutions with a lot of capital, rich people, rich institutions. Also, hopefully with people that have great ideas. And one thing I'm going to steal from Mike Milken and Rich Dentizio, Laura Dialesi, our great leadership, is this notion that you might have an idea for a solution, for a new business, for a great philanthropy. But unless you have access to capital, sometimes it just stays a great idea. And so what we're trying to accomplish here, and I've seen it happen, my 9 years here and longer, is bringing together people with money, people with ideas, and coming up sometimes with a pilot solution. That's something that can then be scaled up if you have the capital.
Absolutely agree. Otherwise, ideas are just policies and ideas. They never get realized. So, coming back to Asia, what's interesting around the world also is that a lot of people feel that the West, is now kind of in trouble or trying to figure out what's the next step. There's a lot of messy domestic politics. China, we're not so sure, because of COVID lockdown, and there's a lot of political uncertainties. So Southeast Asia is an interesting place, Singapore in particular. Some of the innovations and solutions and entrepreneurs really come from the region. And so tell us how you look at Asia
Absolutely.
and how sort of Asia may be leading the world forward, perhaps, in the post-pandemic era.
No, terrific question. I even take a step back and say to people sometimes, what is Asia? When I was on the board of the Asian Development Bank,
Right.
there's probably like 40 to 50 countries that I'm engaging with.
Right.
And that goes back to Central Asia. For the Asian Development Bank, it includes Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia as
Right.
part of Asia.
Right.
And not everyone would define it like that. So first, I would say there's such a diversity of nations
Right.
under that Asia-Pacific umbrella. And certainly there's going to be a diversity of solutions based on a country's state of development. Are they really advanced, like a Singapore?
Right.
Or are they still struggling in some ways to get ahead in Afghanistan, Laos? So I look at these countries and try and think through where is there some commonalities. And one commonality is that, whether a government is, say, inept or corrupt or not the best, my hope is that they are still trying to do something for the people of their country. Maybe it's not always as high on the priority list as I would like, but they are. So how do they do that? And I think more and more countries recognize they again need not just access to capital,
Right.
so do they need to liberalize their capital markets, come up with new ways to raise money, but it's also very Asian about access to education. So what can we do to create a
Right.
better environment, whether it's private education or just strengthening public education? And of course, like at the Milken Institute, we
Yeah.
also say access to good health care. So
course.
health, education, and capital. But countries don't always have as much money as they would like
Yeah.
to provide all that. And that's where the role of the private sector comes in. And clearly it has to be a balance.
Right.
I remember when I traveled throughout the Asia Pacific region, when I was on the board of the ADB, country or my counterparts in different countries would say to me, what is it that we can do
Yeah.
to be the next BRIC? This is like 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
then it was all about Brazil,
Yeah.
Russia, India, and China.
Right.
I never want to offend my hosts. So
Yeah.
I would always say, we absolutely could be this
Yeah.
next BRIC.
Yeah.
But I worry less about these big countries. I worry about what I call this little BRIC. And the little BRIC is bureaucracy, it's regulation,
Right.
it's inequality, and it's corruption. And in each of these areas, they need to
Right.
find the right balance.
Yeah.
Clearly we need bureaucrats. Clearly we need regulation. I don't know if we always need inequality, but the
Right.
reality is in capitalism, some people move up before others. And of course, I don't think we ever need corruption. But even there, some would say in the United States, oh, you've just institutionalized corruption. That's just lobbying. So I think each country will define it, but I think
Right.
we need to address and go back to the basics, the right balance of bureaucracy, regulation, inequality,
Right.
and corruption. And that's how you will be a member of the big BRIC nation. So it's a very simple message, and countries know what they need to do,
Yeah.
but then politics, vested interests
Right.
intervene, sadly so.
Right. Well, I'm glad that Milken is doing this because you're bringing policymakers, investors, celebrities, as well as social activists and philanthropists, everyone together. So I know it will be a very fruitful and productive meeting. But last question, who excites you the most among all the speakers?
What is it like? I guess the fanboy in me would be like, some of the celebrities.
Tell us who these celebrities are.
It's a grand mix. Some people will know from the region. They'll know, and I don't know if you know an actor named Henry Golding.
Yeah.
He was, of course, his career in a way really moved up when he starred in this film, Crazy Rich Asians.
Yes.
We have Eric Nam, who is a Korean American, K-pop star, but he just filmed. I just talked about filmed his first film, which will be coming out.
Okay.
And then from here in Asia, like Asia proper, we have Raline Shah, an amazing Indonesian actress.
Great.
And all of that is actually, all those people are part of a panel that actually I'm going to lead that's focused on what we call the creative economies.
Okay.
I think for too long people thought, oh, everything's going to come from Europe
Right.
or America.
Right.
But Korea has certainly moved to the forefront with the
Absolutely.
power of soft power.
Entertainment, especially.
Why won't it
Yeah.
next be in Indonesia when we go back to Southeast
Yeah,
Asia?
yeah.
And one thing I just want to flag, about Henry Golding and others who really also have built their career also by going to the U.S. You know,
Right.
this last 2 years, sadly, has also been a time of spiking anti-Asian violence
Right.
in the United States. And Henry and others, like me, who are Asian American, have spoken up
Yep.
on this issue. And one thing people always ask was, what's the solution? And in many ways, part of the solution is also part of that bigger solution or a question that you had asked about what's the impact you're going to have.
Right.
Part of the solution will be going down to the community level.
Absolutely.
So we talk about understanding why do people believe a certain thing or act a certain way. Let's go back to the communities to understand
Right.
what are they thinking, and
Right.
also come up with solutions
Right.
that are community driven. So your earlier question about economies in Asia, I say the big opportunity for so many people will be better understanding not just the Chinas and Indias and
Yeah.
Japans of the world, but that diversity of nations that is the Association of Southeast Nations, and understanding at that community level, at that
Yeah.
ground level, the tremendous business opportunities that continue to be here. And that's why I'm so excited that you're here and that I'm here back in Singapore,
Yeah.
because even though we can do Zoom, there's nothing like visiting a
Absolutely.
Singapore or a Malaysia or Vietnam
Yeah.
and seeing the opportunities are there for countries, for companies, for people from all around this region and the world.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Chen, for speaking to us. And we wish you the best of luck for the next 2 to 3 days. And we'll be covering for Taiwan and TVBS. Thank you.